Hi, and thanks for joining me. In this session, I'm sharing a few of the standout features in the new Nik 8 and how they can make your editing workflow even smoother. One of the big changes in Nik 8 is how it fits in with Photoshop's workspace. It now acts more like a plugin, no more floating toolbar, which did used to annoy me at times. You can now actually dock the Nik tools like you would any other panel. Let me show you how it works. For example, you can still go up to Filter and then you can look for Nik 8 and you've got all the tools there, Analog, Color Effects as normal. Where the change is now is that you can actually come up to Plugins and look for Nik 8 and you've got all the tools there, Analog. Now, once you click on that, that becomes a button which you then can dock into a panel and position it in your workspace where you want. For example, you can see over here on the right of my workspace, I've got all the tools there from Nik 8, Analog, Diazer, Color Effects, Silver Effects. You can see now that the logos have changed. What I'm going to do is cover some of the changes in each one of these programs. It's just a highlight, just to show you what has now changed. But the biggest change, as mentioned before, is how it interacts with Photoshop more as a plugin. Key takeaways are faster loading times, better response. It's more of an intuitive tool layout now, especially in Color Effects and Silver Effects. There's new creative presets added in Color Effects and Analog Effects, which is one of my favourites. There's fresh black and white film looks in Silver Effects. Let's get in, have some fun, and let me show you the highlights of Nik 8. How you access Nik 8 now is a preference for you. For me, I like to come over to the panel here and access it like any other plugin that I've got in my creative toolkit. If I want to open up, say for example, Analog, I'll come up to the icon here, I'll click on that, and what you'll notice now, it comes up with a new panel or an interface. What you can do is actually save your favourite presets here, which is a quick way of actually going, well, I like this preset. Instead of me opening up Nik 8 and going or finding it, I can actually have my favourite preset here. But what I am going to do is now click on Open and open up Nik 8 Analog. You'll see that everything looks similar. It's a little bit more streamlined in its interface. And so you'll find that some of the tools that were on the right-hand side have now been shifted over to the left-hand side, particularly in Silver Effects. But for example, on the left-hand side, I've got the presets that I want, that I use, that can be my favourites. I might like the blue faded, and I do use that quite a bit in my digital art. I'll click on that. It applies what I call the filter. It's the same interface where you come over to the right, you can adjust your brightness, your contrast, saturation. You have also got what I call your textures. For this one, it's dirt and scratches. You can also come down here and see the different film type. Now, where it has changed is the options down here at the bottom of the panel. For example, I can save a preset, I can send as a layer, and I've got other choices. Let's say that I want to do some tweaking to this preset, but add my own style to it. So I'm going to come up here and choose another texture, for example. We'll just click on that one. And I certainly don't like those dots, but that's all right. Let's go for that one. Let's change it more into another blue tone or pink tone, whatever I'm wanting. And I quite like that, and let's say that's a preset that I'll work with. I'm going to now click on Save Preset, give it a name, so I'll call it Faded SD, for example. I'll click on Save. It's now saved that preset. I'll come up here where I've actually got All Personal. I'll click on that, and you can see that that's where the preset is. So for example, if I opened up an image in here, I wanted to apply that preset, I'll come over to the panel, look for my personal ones, click on that, and it will apply those changes. But wait, there's more. Now what I want to do is actually send it back to Photoshop as a layer. It's got send as a layer, but what I'm going to do is come over here, click on that and choose what kind of layer that I want. And this is where it's lifted the game working with Photoshop. If you work with smart objects, you can send it as a smart object. It can be on the active layer, can be on a new layer, or it can be new layer with mask. I'll click on new layer with mask. Then what I'm going to do is click send as layer, and I'm going to now click apply. Now when you come back, you'll go, but where's the preset? So for example, what it has done is it applied a mask. And the beauty of this is that I can come in here, click on this mask, I can invert the mask, Control-I or Command-I, and now it's applied the preset. Now, why did I do that? Is that I've got a mask, I can brush off this preset with all the textures, for example, off the foreground or off the cloud. How do I do that? I'm just going to click here, collapse that panel, get my brush, make sure that the brush foreground is black. Let's have a look at the opacity, and I'm ready now just to mask off or brush off that preset that I don't want in the foreground and even on the cloud. And now I can continue on with what I want. It depends on what you're doing, whether you're processing digital art, a composite, landscape photography, your workflow will be different. But for me as a creative, this gives me now a lot more choices that I can play with. I can now continue on with my workflow. For example, I'm going to apply a levels adjustment layer. I'll make a quick change. I'll hit auto, and then I might just play with that mid slider to give it a bit more of a lift. And then I think, oh, hold on a minute, I'd like to go in and do a little bit of tonal adjustment. And the one that I use is Viaza, and I'm going to now click on the icon, and then I'm going to click on open. And this is where it changes. You'll get an interface now that shows all the layers that you've worked on. For example, levels, the analog, and if you've got other layers in there, such as curves, or you've got a photo filter, it will show in this panel and you can work with them. I'm going to show you a trick how you can set up your preferences. And I didn't set this up when I first installed Nik 8, but if you come up into plugins and look under Nik 8, you will actually see that there is preferences. When you click on preferences, it will give another button. And what I've actually done is now move that preference over here underneath. If I click on that, I get options. I can easily go into any of the programs that are in Nik, but where I can play with it a little bit more is open in a plugin. I can apply favorites and last edit, but this is where you can make your choices. Send masks to plugin. And this is one of the things that has been really worked on under the hood with the new Nik 8, is how Nik and Photoshop work together with masks. Now at the moment I've got all masks. I could choose selected masks, do not send mask. This depends on your workflow and how you want to work with masks in Nik. Your normal mask in Photoshop is just as you would do normally, apply a mask, brush off areas, but you can actually take masks into Nik, work on that and bring them back. I will be diving into this a little bit more down the track with videos on different techniques that you can use in the new Nik 8. But I'm going to come over here and click on open, and we're going to open up Viaza again. And I'm going to make some adjustments. For example, I'll come over to the left-hand side, click on presets, and I'll do fill light. I can come over here, use the curves like you did before. You can change your brightness, your contrast, whatever you want to do for your image. I can add a control point here. I can add also to a control polygon that works well for light. I can also add a control line depending on what you're wanting to do. What I can do now is actually change between the different programs. For example, I'm in Viaza. I could go to Color Effects. I could go to Silver Effects, depending on what I want to do with my image. To do that, I'm going to come up to the very top. I can actually click on the down arrow and choose what program that I want. So, for example, I might go now to Color Effects, and I now can switch into the program that I'm wanting to work with. That flexibility of moving between what I call the filters now is a lot more smoother. I'm going to come over here and choose a preset. I'll choose this one, and I can come over here. I've got all the tools that are available there. I can just dial down the glow a little bit. I could play with the high key. I can play a little bit with the shadows. I can do whatever I want. So all the tools there are on my right. Now I've got it to where I want. Do I want to send it as a layer, or do I just want to apply? For example, I'm going to come over here, choose what kind of layer that I want. So I could choose new layer with mask, new layer, or active layer. I'm going to choose active layer and click on apply. Once I go to apply, you'll actually see now in the layer stack, it's put that layer in. I'm going to collapse that panel, and now you can see it has worked on that active layer. But if I'd chosen send layer with a mask, I would have had that mask already attached, and which makes some of the composite work or some of your adjustments a lot easier to brush away. Let's make a change to this image. I'm going to come over here, choose one of the presets, for example, the fill one. I'm going to now make sure that I send this as a smart object. I'll come down here, click on the upturned triangle or arrow. I'm going to click Smart Object, click on Apply, and now this is where Photoshop will open up with all the layers, and the layer will be as a smart object. And how do I know that? I'm going to collapse this panel, and I can look here and see that's the symbol that represents a smart object. But I now think, oh, I didn't like that. What can I do to make a change? I can easily go back into Viaza and make another change. I'll double click here on that filter, and it will open up now into the workspace of Viaza. I'm going to come down here and choose one here, just for example, and then I'll go click on Apply, and now it comes back to Photoshop. Now, when you're working with Nik 8, it's not about the big bells and whistles. It's working with the interface of Photoshop, making your transition of working between the programs, using different layers, smart objects, transferring through the programs. It does make your workflow a lot faster. What I'm going to cover now is the changes in Silver Effects. For those that love working with black and white, Silver Effects is the go-to tool. This is where they have made the changes. They've added new presets in their filters. The panel looks a little bit different to align with all the other programs, such as Viaza or Color Effects, but it still has the same tools with a little bit more what I call grunt to it. Let's dive in and play with Silver Effects. As mentioned, one of the big changes in Nik 8 is the interface working with Photoshop, and it treats it more as a plugin. This is a little tip that I'll share with you that works on each of the icons. If I want to change my look, I can right mouse click onto the icon here on the plant panel, and I can choose Expand Panels, Auto Collapse, Iconic, and Interface options. I've got Show Hidden Panels, but what you can do is experiment with this and see what works for you. Let's look at the changes that are in Silver Effects. But before we do, you can see that the consistency in all the panels, which is the plugin interface. I'm going to click on Open, and then we'll go into Silver Effects, and I'll point out some of the changes that are there. When you first come in, you look at the interface and you think it looks familiar until you look on the right-hand side. There's no tools like brightness, contrast. You'll only see film types. What they've done is they've aligned all those tools over on the left-hand side when you either click on a preset or a filter. For example, if I click on one of these presets, I'll choose this one, you'll see that now the panel has expanded and you've got a number of tools that you can work with there. If I go and click onto another one, you'll see that it's an expandable or extendable panel. What I want to do now is come in and I might change, say the contrast, or I might come in and amplify the whites. Let's come over here onto the left-hand side, and if I click on filters, you'll see now it's in groups. For example, color filter, you've got selective tones, clear view, toning. If I go in and say toning, I can then open up the toning filters, I'll call them that, and you can choose one. Now, once I click on one, it will make that change, but you now get all of the different tools here, but more importantly, you get the toning. This is where they've now made it a lot easier to see the toning features. I know when I was using it, I had to sort of dig right down at the bottom of the panel. I'm going to collapse the toning, and I can come over here and choose another preset or another filter. Let's come down and have a look. Now, as mentioned before, they've added a lot more film types in the presets or the filters. And this is where you can experiment and play with the different filters that you want within your workflow. Let's come right down here now and choose something like this with the yellow tones. I can do all of the changes that I want in here. I can add global, so all of these tools here or sliders are global, and then I can add in local adjustments. Now I'll come in here and I can use, let's say, the control polygon. I'll click on that, and this is where I do love this, and I use this in my digital art, and I can see it would have been benefit when I was doing landscape photography. I'm going to do one click here. I'm going to come down, just say to here, do one click. I'll draw the line over here, one click, come up to the top and click. Now what that's done is put a control point that I can change brightness, contrast, structure, and all of that inside that triangle. So what I'm going to do is come over here and click that slider, and I'll make it brighter, and I am going to exaggerate it a little bit so that you can see. And then I could come down here and say, well, I might lessen the contrast, I might actually brighten the contrast. This is what I use this tool for. Even in my digital art, it's what I call sculpting light, and it's available in all the filters that you've got within Nik. These are just some of the highlights that are in Silver Effects. There's a lot more that we can go in and play. You have the same functionality working with layers and masks. I can come down here, click on this arrow, choose to send with a new layer with mask, smart object. I can just click on apply if that's what I want to do. What I've found with the new Nik 8 is the interface works with each program within Nik Collection. The speed, working with Photoshop, able to transition between Photoshop and Nik seamlessly now because it's a plugin. That's a quick look at some of the highlights in the new Nik 8. The updated interface and features really do make working with Photoshop and Nik a lot more seamless. If you're a digital artist or photographer and haven't added Nik Collection to your workflow yet, it's well worth a look. There's a free 30-day trial, and I'll share my affiliate link so you can check it out. And if you're still on an older version, now's a great time to upgrade. The new tools give you loads more and editing power. I use Nik all the time, and honestly, I wouldn't be without it, and that's why I'm proud to be associated with DxO. More tips and tricks coming soon. This was just a quick highlights tour. Thanks for watching, and have fun being creative.